So why don't we get started? I want to welcome everyone. My name is Paul Kurchina, SAP Community Evangelist, especially around the enterprise architecture topic. And super excited that today is a launch day for the book Enterprise Architecture with SAP. Just a bit of backstory before we lead into the subject we're going to talk about today. You'll get a chance to meet the authors and we'll talk about the book. And I recognize a number of people that are on this call that have been active participants in our enterprise architecture SAP community. And over the last year, there's been a few things that have been happening. One, in terms of the fact that we've been cultivating and growing our enterprise architecture community. And two, in parallel with this, Peter and Johannes, who you'll meet in a few minutes, have been working very, very hard on pulling together this book that we're going to talk about, and as a key resource for our community. One of the authors reached out to me about a year ago, told me about the book, but then he told me I can't tell anybody about the book. But it was greatly satisfying on my end knowing this was in construction over the course of time. And the other thing in parallel with this was the fact that it was in Sapphire, Orlando this year when both Christian Klein and Thomas Sauersegg, and I've been in the SAP world for decades, actually mentioned enterprise architecture and enterprise architect on stage, which was further, I'll say, an inspiration and validation of the efforts we're doing to help the community. And why this book is also so important is, and we'll talk about it a little further, we have another asset for the community in different forums that we're going to help you as architects evolve. Whether you're a current architect, whether you're an SAP professional who desires to be an architect, or whether you're a C-level professional, we've got you covered. So I encourage you as well, we'll set some context about the book, why it happened, and a bit of guide in terms of how to navigate it. And we'll be answering some questions throughout. And also be sharing with you as well, inside the chat, where you can get the book, as well as basically a discount code, which is EASAP Community, for a 15% discount on the book. And I want to highlight as well, you have a number of different options in terms of purchasing the book. Digital only, paper copy, or a combination of the two. And very pleased that this is the first color book that is done by SAP Press. So, enough of me, and I want to start by introducing the authors of the book. They'll give a bit about their background and context, and I will highlight, they're not just seasoned enterprise architects. Actually, Peter, I didn't call you old, but I said you're seasoned. But they're very, very passionate. And, when people come together often to produce an SAP Press book, it's not like they quit their day jobs for 6 to 8 months and compile this thing. In addition to doing their day jobs, they're working as a group to produce this book. So again, I want to thank you on behalf of the community for the efforts you've done. And it's sort of funny, we were talking a few months ago about once I could say the book was coming, we could not believe how far this date was away, and today is the date. And it's kind of cool that we're doing it. We have some of the authors here in Waldorf. We did a special session for outside the cafeteria in Waldorf, where people could get exposed to the book and the authors. And immediately following this, in the Newtown Square, SAP's North American headquarters, Nupul, you meet in a minute, is actually doing a session in Newtown Square where he'll be outside the cafe at SAP's headquarters to further talk about and showcase the book. So enough about on my end. Peter, let's start on your end with some introductions.
Yeah, happy to do so. Peter Klee, my name. I'm an SAP, I'm an enterprise architect, not only SAP architect. Okay, long before I joined SAP. I'm now with SAP 14 years, but I think I have a longer professional career outside with the Friends of Procter & Gamble. So I work for Gillette and Procter & Gamble. And I think, so picking up enterprise architecture for a long time, right? So, but I think now in SAP, I think the three of us came together with a unique vision on how to evolve it, right? So we work professionally together in the consulting department, working with all big customers, and I think that was for us the motivation in the book, but I think Anup will talk about it a little later. Maybe, Johannes, you continue?
Yeah, sure. Hi. So my name is Johannes Reichel. I'm part of SAP Germany. I'm based here in Waldorf-Roth. I'm with SAP for 10 years now in different roles. I've previously worked in consulting, mainly in sustainability consulting and business transformation consulting. And outside of the SAP universe, I've also worked in digital transformation projects, mainly in Africa. And I'm an enterprise architect now in the team of Peter Klee and supporting our largest customers in planning out their transformation.
Great. Anup, over to you in Newtown Square.
Sure. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank SAP Press and Paul for doing this. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about our book. So my name is Anup Das. I'm based out of Newtown Square office in SAP America. I have been in professional experience in the last 24 years, covering the domain in automotive and then in partner, and in SAP since last 16 years. So out and out services delivery consultant, and being an enterprise architect, which we'll talk about our team as well a little later. SAP Transformation Hub since last 6 years now. It has been a pleasure to work with my co-authors and delivering to our esteemed customers and transforming their journey for their digital transformation.
And I really want to say the important thing about you gentlemen in the book you produce as well and your background is you're practitioners working with customers in the field. So that's a very important factor. So why don't we get started with a few things. So why this book and why another enterprise architect book, gentlemen?
Yeah, so we brought some book and I will just share, and then Anup, maybe you get going.
Yeah, let me take this why part, right? So I think it's very much important, and why is actually about why starts with a purpose, right? So I think we all had this thought maybe for quite some time, and we have been not talking, but then at the same time, this transformation hub was probably one of the glue where we came together, right? So and then that the trigger got inspired by being together and delivering together with our customers, which is very, very important, because when we meet our customers, we get the real customer situation around the architecture. So primarily, if you see why we started this book, there are 4 things based on which we thought that this would make sense. And while when we were conceptualizing, we were discussing about various customer situations, challenges, the way technology was evolving, and still a lot of complexities was coming, and we saw that architecture is getting more and more focused again, right? And that's probably also the reason why our team, which is a very unique team within SAP and within our customer services and delivery board area, which is SAP Transformation Hub. Our day job is enterprise architecture. We design the target architecture and roadmap for our customers. So that's what we see. We always in love with this topic. That was one reason, and also the architecture was getting more focused. So that was the first point. And then what we see, the second bullet point here, which you see that we see that this classic enterprise architecture, when we say classic, essentially it means that we create all these diagrams in a PPT, and then the frameworks, which is static, and then we do once, and then it doesn't evolve, right? And at the right time, SAP also was investing a lot on this topic. So we have our own SAP Enterprise Architecture Framework, which has got very good content, methodology, the tools, practice, and the services. So that gave us a very flexible framework, which also led us to write this in our book. That's the second thing why we wanted to write this book. Third, which we thought that essentially, if you see enterprise architect, you will see that it is a very isolated function, or it becomes an isolated function because it has to travel between the business and IT, or the CXOs and the developers. So we have to travel a lot between these two teams. At the same time, it cannot be static, right? So that therefore the tool plays a very important role here, and that also led us to write a book. last but not the least, since we have experience in starting this startup like SAP Transformation Hub on enterprise architecture, we have a lot of good experience on how to set up an enterprise architecture practice. So when we go to our customers, we also see that they have the enterprise architecture practice, and then we see that sometimes they're independent and enterprise architecture islands, or it's not self-sufficient, they don't have enough resources to work, and then there's not enough collaboration. So enterprise architecture as a function, it has becoming a more collaborative function, right? So these four things, probably we thought as a planned activity to write a book, but as you say, right, when there's a will, there's a way, and then what happened in this is the first announcement, when probably we have written 20% of the book, right? And then say, okay, LeanIX got acquired by SAP. So we had to change, and we included exclusive part on LeanIX. And the second key thing, which was kind of unplanned, which Paul already mentioned, that our CEO announced it in Sapphire, our customer service and board area, Thomas Sarasek announced in the Sapphire. That gave a lot of importance to enterprise architecture, and that would not have been a perfect time to get this book written, and it all came through. So in short, in summary, we wanted to give a practitioner's view to demystify enterprise architecture. At the same time, we wanted to make this an integrated, collaborative, approachable enterprise architecture practice. And that's the reason why probably you will see a lot of things in the book, and also is one of the key reasons why we wanted to write the book.
So who is this book for?
Well, Paul, I think you mentioned already a couple of personas for who we wrote the book, but I think it's obvious that a book on enterprise architecture is for enterprise architects. But we have thought about the enterprise architect not only from an SAP enterprise architect background role, but also targeting enterprise architects that are having a larger scope in their corporation. Their responsibility is usually not only for the SAP domain, they have other domains that they have to integrate. And our book helps also those enterprise architects that might not have a strong SAP background to better understand what is unique about SAP's enterprise architecture and what does SAP with Enterprise Architecture Framework offer to support those enterprise architects. And then, of course, not only the enterprise architects are our target group, also SAP professionals, typically solution architects or technology architects that are in the SAP universe. And some of them might want to evolve into the role of an enterprise architect and always thought about, okay, what would be my starting point? How can I apply methodologies, tools, and content? And for them, we offer also this book as a guidance. But also if you say, I'm a solution architect, I don't want the role of an enterprise architect, you also get something out of this book, because you will see in the methodology we have a solution domain where we describe the artifacts that are relevant for you as a solution architect, or where you collaborate with the enterprise architect. So also for those SAP professionals, it's quite the opportunity to learn something out of this book. And then as well, Paul, as you mentioned, the C-level executives. We don't expect that C-level executives will execute enterprise architecture framework at the end. But as Anup said, enterprise architecture is all about connecting business and IT. And the C-level executives, they're driving strategies in their organization. And they will learn how the enterprise architect can support the transformation. We have use case chapter on, for instance, cloud transformation, business transformation, TCO reduction, and so on. So the C-level executive will learn what is the benefit of having an EA practice and how to set up this practice, and then how to apply the enterprise architecture framework to really be successful in the transformation.
So I just want to add one other point. Anup and I were just at the ASUG Tech Connect event last week in West Palm Beach, which weather is a little bit different than here in Waldorf, Germany, just a little bit different, I'll say. But it was inspiring to see, and we talked about this resource, and there was a lot of interest from the architects and others. We talked to the crowd. And one thing, Anup and I were both at, we did a session on the final day talking about the community evolution, and we asked in the room, in the audience, who was in the room. And to your point, it wasn't just enterprise architect. A large majority of the crowd was actually non-SAP professionals in your bubble here that were quite interested in the topic. So that was inspiring to see. And quite pleased that is, because I get questions all the time in the community. I'm not in the field. Where do I get started? How do I evolve? So it's great to target that audience and also more engagement with executives as well. for them understand particular things about this.
Absolutely, yeah. And we also have other roles in mind when we were writing this book, and we have even dedicated a whole chapter on additional functions that are related to enterprise architecture, where we see an overlap in the daily work, or where we would rather push for more closer collaboration between the functions. And some of them you see here. So also the book will provide some insights for people working in corporate strategy departments who think, okay, I have a corporate strategy defined. How do I execute it? How do I make sure it is implemented in my enterprise architecture? And those people will learn also in our book how to come from a strategy and then break it down into actionable enterprise architecture work packages, so to speak. So this is just one example, but we could also go in the others, like PMO. If I'm responsible for driving transformation projects in my organization, you will see how the enterprise architecture framework will support you in planning out your initiatives, analyzing dependencies between the initiatives, and then building an overall transformation roadmap with the help of the enterprise architecture practice. So that's also a larger audience that we're targeting. And when we were writing the book, it has more than 560 pages at the moment. And if you are in one of the outer circles here, then you might wonder, how can I best read the book? So from the beginning, we were already thinking about how to read the book, and that's something I would like to hand over to Peter to talk more about it.
So I have to bring in props to this. So there's a book I bought a long time ago. It's called How to Read a Book. So I'm not sure any of you have heard the book on how to read a book, but it's a pretty good book. And you know, it's interesting. How do you read a book in 2024 and almost 2025 now? You know, a couple things you do, first of the bat. You know, someone's done a webcast or a session about the book, and you listen to it to get some added insights into the book. And then you get ready to unpack the book. So I was quite pleased. There is, and Peter's going to talk about it in a second, a reading guide, a metro map into how to read the book. As Johanna said, it's 500 plus pages in there. And I think that guidance is important in terms of how to best navigate given the different roles. Peter?
Okay. Well, I think what is in the book, maybe the easiest thing is to show you all the contents. Okay, now you can read the book, right? So, okay, a little bit of joke aside, right? So I think, you see maybe already the colors of the different parts, so this should be enough guidance. But I think we want to now give you a reading lines, the reading guidance through those different chapters, and that is what I will talk about, maybe in a different format. So what we will go through is a bit about the different parts of the book, one by one, and then the different, you can say reading line, metro map, so different connotations. So the first part is for sure an introduction to the overall book and the framework discussion. This is chapter 2. Chapter 3 is already what we talked about, the different functions from the PMO, strategy, etc. So it's already a little bit of a special chapter and maybe not part of all reading experiences. And when we initially started the book, we had a chapter for generic tool capabilities, whereas LeanIX is coming in later. The second part is more about the really practical use cases. So those are typical engagement types. So it's not, we don't name customers by name, but this is based on our experiences delivering to large customers. And this is then often more from an SAP perspective. So how does mergers and acquisitions and divestitures in SAP-centric landscapes need enterprise architecture to be more efficient, right? So I think it's really this use case thinking. And if this is the part you're most interested in, then you might even hop on the blue line and only get started with the framework. You jump over a couple of other chapters and then focus on those practical examples. People maybe, as project managers, for them this might be a good starting point, and they don't want to go to the more in-depth chapters. Next one is the part 3 on SAP LeanIX. As I think Anuv said, I think this came in as a surprise, so that part was not in the initial negotiation with SAP PRESS, but I think then we convinced now this is so big and we are already using it in our delivery. So I think we are getting our hands dirty already. So if tooling is a strong chapter for you. We have the orange line for you to cover that one. Next, and we also talked about that, is the setting up the practice, because you could have a nice framework, you could have nice tools, methodology, but how you put it in life in your organization, what maturity has your organization, how can you improve that maturity, what are the different dimensions to improve that one. So if the practice theme is of importance for you, we would recommend starting with a framework, going through the functional discussions with, because again, your EA practice should not be in isolation. It needs to be linked with the different functions. And then this chapter 16 is a special chapter where we also have a double click on the EA practices within SAP, because we are practiced in our service arm. We have an internal IT team organization as well. They have an enterprise architecture team. We have engineering teams with enterprise architecture, and we have LeanIX as a new company, also part of SAP, also dealing with enterprise architecture. So there are so many different perspectives on SAP, on enterprise architecture in SAP. So we said, maybe it's an interesting insight to unveil that one as well. And the success of us here is that we are working across the board areas together to have only one framework, from engineering to consulting and pre-sales and all the different departments. That makes us also unique. So then towards the end, we also try to look into the future, and you can imagine, will this be around AI? A little bit AI you probably also find in this book, but this is, it's a bit of our personal objective. We picked some trends and give it a try to look into the future. Well, maybe a second edition in a couple of years will tell us how good we have been on that one. And I think then chapter 18 is looking back to that one. We have, for very experienced architects who might see, what are the specialties of the book? We also have another reading experience, which is the purple line, which links the special chapters. And in the end, you can also open the book on any page you want and have your own individual experience. Or you read it from page 1 to page 561 or whatever it is. That's a bit of our how to read the book.
So let's get started with a few questions, sort of unpack things a little more a bit and try to get a sense of things that are perhaps on the minds of our listeners. So, Peter, how does the book aim to demystify enterprise architecture and makes it really more approachable for readers? What are some of the ways that you believe it achieves this goal?
Well, I think by our elements of our enterprise architecture framework, I think combining methodology with the content, with the tooling, with services, and with the new dimension of practices, we believe it's no longer only the super architect. For sure, a good educated architect is good, but we think with these ingredients, it's more in the kind of an engineering, and therefore it can be a practice to be adopted. And I think we even hired out of university new hires into our team, and it was so energizing to see that after 2 years they can lead large enterprise architecture assessments. So I think, and that is what we also try to transport through the book by unveiling the different perspective of the framework.
So I have a bit of a different add to that. One of the sessions that we did last week at the ASEC Tech Connect event was a session on the SAP certification. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a bit about, is this also a great resource to help people with the certification?
The certification is not a beginner certification, so I would not recommend read the book and then go to the certification and then being frustrated by failing in a large way, right? Because, like with many certifications, it is seen as a pro certification. So there are training classes like IE 10, but you need to be a practitioner for a couple of years. And because even after just one training class, I would not recommend right away going through the certification. And I think we are building also additional resources online and elsewhere, and the book can help to it. I think it will definitely help in the understanding, but this is not a prep guide to the certification.
So don't read over the weekend and do the exam on Monday.
Well, you can try, but then you try it on Tuesday and Wednesday again.
Sounds good. So, one for you here. So, based on your experience, what are the most common challenges or pain point that enterprise architects face that the book aims to address?
Yeah, I think this is very important question, I would say, because if you ask 5 people who is enterprise architect, probably you'll get 5 different answers, right? So, and that we see even when we go to our customers, depending on who is on the other side, they may talk, say, for example, on the technical architecture. They think probably that is enterprise architecture. If you also talk to our colleagues, we get different variants of an enterprise architecture, even though it's a very well-defined role, right? And a function, to be honest, not even role, right? It's a function. So I think some of the challenges which we have faced in our own day-to-day life, we try to put forward in the book. Like, for example, what are the key activities which enterprise architect is supposed to do when they should enter in the transformation journey for our customers, right? What is the ideal phase? 80 to 90%, I would say, should be right in the beginning of the transformation when customers planning. Second challenge would be like, see again, if you look at, maybe you remember Paul, in the SAP Summit or another event, people say, okay, cut that bullshit and all that thing about all these...
You know I can't beep that out, right? I can't beep that out. You said that. I can't beep that out.
What is real, right? So what is real? So we as a practitioner, we try to make it real. So I think that should connect with our readers in the sense that because we have faced those pains, we have faced those challenges, and we try to give that in the form of use cases. So there are a lot of customer use cases which is there in this book, everywhere in the book, which of course we have generalized it, but then those are real customers, or maybe a mix of customer experience which I try to give. So I think there are a lot of pains and challenges which the enterprise architects are facing today in the real world as a practitioner. Those we are hoping that this book would answer that.
And you folks have lived them, for sure.
Still do, right?
So, Johannes, can you provide more details on how the book talks about the SAP Enterprise Architecture Framework? I mean, how does it differ from other frameworks, and what are some of the key benefits for the readers?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a good question, and also some of our customers are asking me this question because you may argue, okay, why does SAP have to provide an own enterprise architecture?
Because you're SAP.
We're a software vendor perceived by our customers, first of all, and then, of course, the question is valid why a software vendor should propose an own framework for how to do enterprise architecture when we have TOGAF and other very well-known enterprise architecture frameworks available. And I would say what makes the EAF, the Enterprise Architecture Framework from SAP, quite unique is that it bundles different topics. So it has a strong methodology, but a methodology that is designed for practitioners. This methodology is aligned with TOGAF, so if you know TOGAF, you will easily also understand the SAP methodology for enterprise architecture planning. But our focus is more on really giving something to the practitioners, so something that you can apply from day one if you are assigned to do enterprise architecture work. And then we have not only the methodology, we have the reference content also available that is aligned with the methodology. So I don't need to start from an empty sheet of paper when I do a business capability map, for example. I have a strong and industry-specific reference content available from SAP, best practice content that I can immediately use. And then I have the tooling part, now with SAP LeanIX and some other tools, where I can then consume this reference content, and then I can create those artifacts from the methodology. So you see everything fits together at the end, methodology, reference content, and tooling. And then on top we have in the framework also the practice, EA practice domain, so how do you set up an EA practice in your organization. And then on top we have services where we can then support our customers to create the enterprise architecture, do the planning. So in short I would say it's like SAP ERP, it's the best of suite, because we have everything together in the framework.
Great, thank you. So what are some of the unique customer use cases, scenarios that are covered in the book that you think will be most valuable to the users? I mean, to me, that's one of the things that, in addition to, it really makes the book, I think, more come alive and be more relatable.
Absolutely. I think when Peter was presenting about how to read the metro map, there is a specific section on use cases, the part 2. But as I said, the use cases are also in the LeanIX section, for example, right? So that's there. But I think some of the unique use cases which we wanted to address here, which what we have addressed here is like as you see, right? So cloud transformations. That's a unique use case which is there. And again, we have not only explained how to leverage the framework which has the 5 pillars onto these use cases when we join the customers, and also we have given examples of the deliverables which is required to be done, for example, for cloud transformation. There are use cases for business transformation. There are use cases for sustainability. There are use cases for mergers and acquisitions. Maybe this will give you a little bit more insights on, say, mergers and acquisitions. That's a very strong business strategy for our customers nowadays. So either you acquire or get merged, get bigger, or you divest or spin off to become more agile and be relevant for future, right? So we have a very specific use case for, say, one for divestiture, one for acquisition, using the framework. Like when you acquire a company, you are not only acquiring you are also trying to adapt the culture, but from an enterprise architecture perspective, it's more on what capabilities is coming in. You have that capability. Is there can we take the best of 2 worlds of the capabilities? Either the acquired company capability, how they were running is best, or what we were doing is best, right? So we can have those, say, business capability heat maps to derive that. So also, it not only comes the business architecture, it also impacts the application. Sometimes the company which you're acquiring is not in SAP ERP, or it could be non-SAP ERP, right? So then how do you inject into your landscape so that it becomes seamless, or it becomes, to give a target vision. So those kind of use cases are there, which I'm sure our readers will relate, because this is what, when we go to the field, we get into those kind of use cases, and we solve a customer problem to make them relevant using enterprise architecture framework and deliverables. That's very, very much structured, like even Johannes said. The framework is our foundation, based on which our use cases, which we apply and make it relevant for our customers.
Great. And relative to my next question, SAP announced they were going to acquire LeanIX, I believe it was September of last year, and the acquisition was closed in November. So you guys had to be a little agile in putting some new things in the books. So, Johannes, can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned the content in the book relative to LeanIX for enterprise architecture. So can you talk a little bit about the readers can learn from that section, those sections?
So, as Peter has shown, we have then decided to finally dedicate a full part on LeanIX, and I think that was the right decision, even though it was a bit of work for us, because 30% of the content was already done. But it's important, and when we thought about, okay, what do we put in such a book, it was clear for us that we don't want to replicate the LeanIX documentation that is online, which is, by the way, quite good. But we have put the LeanIX content, so of course we start with the introduction to LeanIX, the main concepts of how to deal with fact sheets, how to use the meta model, the reporting, diagrams, and so on. But not, as I said, not replicating what is anyways there in the LeanIX documentation, but rather from a practitioner enterprise architect, from our experience working also with LeanIX, giving here hints and tips how to do things in practice, what we have learned, sometimes the hard way in our engagements, how to use the tool. So I think that's something the readers will learn, even though we're describing again the basics about LeanIX. So even if you don't know LeanIX, it's fine, you can start learning about the tool and also get our perspective from a practitioner. And then we also talk not only about the concepts of LeanIX, but also how to use what I mentioned, the reference content, because it's a very important topic for our customers and our engagement with the customers. Because now the reference content is also available in LeanIX for use, so the capability models, for instance. So how this can be leveraged. And then we close this part on LeanIX with a use case. So we describe how a transformation use case is approached with LeanIX, how the baseline architecture modeling is done, how we do the transformation planning, also simulating them with the time slider, how you can see how the transformation is happening in time. So I think that sums it up what we have here in the book for the reader.
Thank you. So
maybe to build a bit on top of it, for sure, as I think when we are working with LeanIX in our day life as well, right? So, and we have additional requirements from our practice as well, right? So the tool will evolve. So I think it's, therefore, I think even after there are now new features already out in the tool which are not yet in the book. And that is natural, but so it will give you a first impression. It will not replace any kind of formal training or even total
So,
documentation.
Peter, you mentioned earlier in terms of that the book gives guidance on creating an effective VA practice. Can you talk more about some of the key considerations and best practices that are shared in the book?
Yeah, I think when I heard already the question, okay, will the book answer me how many enterprise architects I need in my practice? Okay.
42.
42 is always the answer to everything. Yeah, I know. I think it's, and if you are familiar to TOGAF, even when TOGAF talks about practice, they think about, okay, let's apply an enterprise architecture for the enterprise architecture function. So I think it needs to be clear what are the strategic objectives, why do you do enterprise architecture, and then also what value can you bring to the corporation, right? So, and that is then going back to the discussion again, okay, how does enterprise architect integrate to other functions so that it's not only a business case or value case for enterprise architecture, but if you support, let's see, strategic investment decisions, if you support PMO, if you support the procurement department, etc., out of the sudden, these departments see the value in enterprise architecture and will ask for the services from enterprise architecture. So enterprise architecture should not be the isolated policing department, but it should be a collaborative function. And therefore, then this practice chapters talks about this integration, but also for sure the maturity. If you start from maturity level 1, whatever, chaotic, don't try to boil the ocean in one step. So if even there, I think, what are the most important domains? But our clear guidance is don't do it only as an IT enterprise, as an IT architecture, but really as enterprise architecture from the business impact, etc. So that is the thing, right? So using maybe a maturity assessment and then derive your roadmap to mature your practice and build the practice over time.
Great. So enough of another question for you here is in terms of, there's importance in terms of integrating EA with other functions, PMO, process owners, innovation teams. Can you talk about some strategies for building these cross-functional connections?
Yeah, I think Peter spoke about it a little bit, right? So in the sense, so that there are, first of all, this enterprise architecture, as we have been talking, is not an isolated function. It has to work together with other functions. Now, one key, so there are multiple teams which this gets built to, like the data management team or the process team or innovations team or strategy team. But one very strong influence which we see is the enterprise architecture interacting with the business process management team, right? It's important because these are the two, I would say, the pillar for enterprise architecture, business capability and business process, right? So traditionally we have always been doing enterprise architecture through business capability because that's what talks about what the business does. But now more and more when we interact, business a team from the customer takes the lead and they understand like how this has been implemented in their organization. So it's a very strong integration required between the enterprise architecture team and the BPM team, and there are a lot of tools also available to structure this in a very nice way. One of them, of course, our LeanIX and Signavio. This makes it a lot of easy because then you have a lot of visibility, transparency, and then can correct things if something is not working in a very efficient and easy way, right? So and these kind of there also, like say PMO, right? So we enterprise architect gets in during the planning of the transformation, and of course PMOs are there, program managers are there, but their role becomes even more important when it goes for execution. Now, how does this, whatever the work done in planning, will translate into execution? So that also makes it important that if you do a better planning, execution. I'm not saying whatever you plan is executed. There are sort of changes, but at the same time, the visibility is important. The transparency is important. And what you're carrying forward from the data and the meta models to the execution is very, very important. So those things are well articulated in our book as well, which I'm sure readers will love it.
Thank you. So Johannes, looking ahead, how do you see the role of the enterprise architect evolving, and how does the book help prepare readers to navigate the changes in the industry?
Yeah, so the role of the enterprise architect has actually always evolved. If you think back about maybe in the beginning rather focusing on the IT landscape and a strong business IT alignment on the shoulders of the enterprise architect driving digital transformations and so on. So and if you think back about also the introduction what Anuk gave on Christian Klein's announcement on the role of the enterprise architect, so there's a lot of expectations for this person. And we see a lot of challenges, as you mentioned, in the industries, blurring industries, transformations in the industries. We have some political challenges. Sustainability was mentioned already. So we need, I think, even stronger business and IT alignment, even in future. And enterprise architect comes with everything that is needed to drive that. And I think beginning of this year, or since this year, we also see the AI revolution happening. So this poses another question for the enterprise architect, how now to infuse AI into enterprise architectures. One from a capability level, so how do I plan my capabilities, AI powered, what does that mean for my data architecture, technology stack, and so on. But also in my daily work as an enterprise architect, how do I leverage AI tools? LeanIX already has some AI capabilities, generative AI capabilities in, and they will be growing, as Peter mentioned, those features. And I think in the near future, we can derive a baseline architecture with a few clicks with AI and automation. So this will change the way the enterprise architect is working. It will not make the person obsolete, but it will have an impact on the daily work, and I see a positive impact if I'm looking at. And lastly, I would like to say that what also Peter mentioned when going through the different parts of the book, we have one chapter at the end where we talk about future trends. Not only AI, because AI is an obvious trend, it's not a future trend, it's a trend that is happening already, but we're also looking into trends like quantum computing. It's a big buzz at the moment also, but we actually haven't seen it happening in practice much. Everyone is talking about it. There are a lot of startups. SAP is also investing into quantum computing. And that's an impact where we also see then on the enterprise architecture. And we're trying to go through some of these trends that we see in future and do also an evaluation, what we see likely or less likely. Of course, it's like looking in our crystal ball, but we cannot predict the future. But we think there will be some trends happening, and it's better to get prepared early on as an enterprise architect to drive those changes then.
I know one of my favorite part was a reference to the community and the power of community. Yeah. So that's, especially an enterprise architect SAP community, we all love that, don't we? So another question for Anup in terms of, can you share some of the initial feedback you've seen from some of the early readers of the book? And what do you think has resonated most with people? And it's actually interesting, I just want to highlight as well, we did a SAP Enterprise Architects Academy a few weeks ago in San Ramon at the SAP Academy for Engineering, and where we had the opportunity, or our attendees had the opportunity to learn from Peter and Anup as the book as a resource. And, it was interesting. In essence, it was a bit of field testing of taking the book out, embedded inside an event, and the book, now that it's out, as a resource for attendees. So it was encouraging, at least what I saw in terms of the interaction and engagement, that aspect. And so can you comment further, Anup?
Yeah, I would probably start off with one funny incident which happened. So one of the, we were actually talking customers and partners, and said, okay, what's the best USP of the book? I said, this is one of the first book in color, right? So one caution is don't read it at night. You may have colorful dreams. So that was a little funny, and then we all went to laughter. But yeah, I think the feedback has been quite positive. And again, this book, SAP Enterprise Architecture book with SAP-centric information. I think people were probably waiting. We will see how it goes over a period of time. But I think the initial feedback is, okay, so you're talking about SAP and enterprise architecture together. That's fantastic. That's one good thing, because enterprise architecture is not only SAP, right? It's beyond SAP. Yep. But giving flavors from SAP by SAP architects, that I think is one good USP. People get good feedback. Other is it is a holistic book, right? So even though we are saying there are a lot of use cases, customer examples, but it talks about frameworks, the functional integration, different departments. So we are not saying this is the Superman team, right? We are saying that we need to collaborate, we need to integrate. At the same time, the feedback, are you guys Nostradamus? You're predicting something in enterprise architecture? Yes, maybe something we are trying to predict. But yeah, I mean, it's all because of our experience, collective experience. So I think out and out, some of them, the initial feedbacks from, say, Tech Connect or in San Ramon Enterprise Architecture community has been quite positive. People are excited about it to come. Many of my friends and colleagues or my customer friends, they already said, I booked your book, and this is some people have sent me the receipt also. They I bought it, they're confirming. So which is good thing. But some people said, it's still not there in my link in my country, but yeah, it will come in once it's released. So yeah, it has been quite a overwhelming experience so far.
Yeah, it was actually, I'll share a brief funny story, and basically, so, it was about a month ago, before the book was actually published, we had SAP Press produce, basically it was a mock book, right? Because it's hard to say, we got a book without showing something, right? And we did some photos with you and Peter at the event last week, and we had, a key SAP executive and supervisory board member sent a note saying, I want the book. And it's like, okay, it's not really out till today, right? So, but he's first on the list pretty much to get the book. So we've got a few questions coming in. And gentlemen, I'm going to pose a few questions for you, but I'm going to ask you to think about something as well as we close. So each of you I'm going to ask as well, what is, in a few sentences, your one takeaway you'd like to leave the audience, our listeners today, in terms of the book? If you, in a sentence or two, what would that be? So, not yet. I'll let you think about it, gentlemen, as we go through some questions. So let me go. Let's see. Question is here in the book, is the book written only on TOGAF Reference Architecture Framework or also SAP EAF Architecture Framework? Any chance compares the TOGAF, Zachman, and Gardner frameworks?
Let me take that. So, we have in the introduction to the Enterprise Architecture Framework, in the chapter, we're talking also about TOGAF, Zachman, and other frameworks, and do a brief comparison to also the SAP Enterprise Architecture Framework. But our book is not about now writing another book on TOGAF or something. It's focusing on the Enterprise Architecture Framework by SAP. But as I mentioned, it's the methodology in the framework is closely aligned with TOGAF, and we want to closely align it with TOGAF. We don't want to come up with completely new concepts, but it's more from a practical perspective, where TOGAF has more theory. We believe that it's easier to use our framework because it's from practitioners to practitioners.
Great. So the next question here, I'll ask you, gentlemen. Enterprise architecture includes the overall application portfolio beyond just SAP. How do you approach managing this?
I can take this.
And you deal with it all the time, Peter, in your customers.
Well, I dealt with this when
you were a customer.
When I was a customer, and actually one of my former team members, they bought LeanIX before it was acquired. And then I think the tooling and the framework is not specific on SAP at all. So I think for sure all the considerations we have on instance strategy, on application rationalization, on capability mapping is not specific to SAP. The only part of the framework, I would argue, which is specific to SAP is the reference content, which comes handy, right? So, but this is only the starting point. Now, in our services, in our day-to-day practice, we work always with non-SAP stuff as well, and therefore, you as customers might want to apply it also very generically. for sure, when customers buy our services, they would not, okay, please explain me the Salesforce capabilities and why Salesforce is better than SAP. So yes, we are also a software vendor, but I think the framework is also to be used outside and beyond SAP. And even LeanIX would say so. I was on the LeanIX conference in Frankfurt. They say only, I can't remember exactly, I think they say 30% of their investment is SAP specific and 70% is again only across everything. And also Signavio came from not only SAP. Yes, now there is certain things on the end-to-end tool chain, which is also maybe then a bit specific, also then to Cloud ALM. But overall, I think the book is also addressed to non-SAP architects, as mentioned at the beginning. Because often I know it from my own past. I think the non-SAP architects don't want to talk to the SAP architects. And we rather want to bring those two worlds together so that the non-SAP architects talk to the SAP architects.
Yeah. Okay. So next question here is, what is your elevator pitch to SAP customers on why they should use probably the enterprise architecture framework? Let's see, for their SAP S/4HANA programs.
I can take that, maybe.
Yeah.
So, no, I think my elevator pitch would be, see, right now, there are enough content, enough framework, enough tools available in the market, and also customers are using different shape and form. But I think SAP Enterprise Architecture Framework will bring that method to the madness, right? In the sense, it has 5 pillars, right? Content, tools, services, practice, and methodology, right? It's a very well-rounded framework. And when we go and help our customers, we take that framework, not only the methodology, the content, and use the tool, and also the services which we have, to give them a very, prescriptive guidance. Of course, every customer situation is different, but how do you make it standardized? It's very difficult. So this framework definitely helps. This methodology definitely helps. And this tool brings in the reusability factor, right? It's not like one time. Like Johannes was talking about the future trends. One of the future trends we are saying that it could be an agile and iterative enterprise architecture, right? It's not like you come in the transformation and then vanish for next 2 years. So I think that probably would be my elevator pitch, that when you use it for S/4HANA transformation program, it's a 4-year program, or it's a 5-year program, or it's a 3-year program, and it's not only S4, it is all the peripheral applications also getting impacted. So there will be supply chain planning applications like IPP, or EWM, or TM, or manufacturing systems, and say BTP and BW, and there is hosts. So customer needs guidance, and then enterprise architects are the perfect person to give them a guidance, and the framework helps to do that, actually.
Great.
That's our tool. That's how we take it to the market.
Great. And, thanks people that submitted questions. Fortunately, we're just winding down. We will take them all, but we'll try to get back to the people that have submitted them. So just before I get into your money quotes, guys, at the end as key takeaways, I want to do just a few plugs. So first of all, you'll get pushed to you, and it was in the chat, some information on how to access the book and using the EA SAP community discount code. EA SAP community, all one word, 15% discount code. So I encourage you to use that. And the last piece I want to highlight, and this will be a shameless community plug, is we have our big Next Generation SAP Enterprise Architect Forum in Newtown Square the week of February 24th to 27. We had one in last week of February this year. 351 people showed up and were there in the room with great content. We've enhanced things, are enhancing things for 2025, but the other iteration is we'll have the book authors there, and they'll be delivering some content inside the program in various different points. And some of the attendees will be getting a copy of the book as well as a reference resource. So I just want to highlight that as well. Okay, so gentlemen, money round at the end. So we'll start with Peter. Your money quote, and not just buy tons of copies of the books, even though we want them to, but go ahead.
No, my quote actually would be an ask to the audience, right? So, okay, we give out the book, we want to get the feedback, and the SAP community is an excellent forum where we could have that exchange, right? So because if we see that there is an interest, there could be an active discussion in that community, and that might motivate us to create more content or specific content which is related to the book. I don't want to talk yet about the edition version 2, but I think that would be my wish and my spirit I want to give here to the audience.
Okay. By the way, any of you on the call, we're going to do more dialogue as well. If you look for, we have a LinkedIn group for the Enterprise Architecture SAP community on LinkedIn. Search for it on LinkedIn, join, and we'll have some additional, in addition to the content we have, we'll have some interaction with the authors as well. Mm-hmm. Johannes?
I would say that the book is not only that we have a service called Northstar SAP, but the book is kind of a North Star for you to navigate in complex enterprise architecture planning endeavors, to phrase it like that. Because if you start enterprise architecture work, you are faced with so many complexities and you don't know where to start from. And the book, I think, helps you to slice the elephant and start working using the SAP Enterprise Architecture Framework.
Great. And enough, just before you have to, after this, we close, you head down by outside the cafe in Newtown Square for your author's appearance. What would be your closing words for the audience?
Yeah, I think I would say, Peter showed this metro map, right? I would say my favorite hop on to the blue line and the purple line, which is basically right from the part 1, it goes to use cases, and then purple line are the special cases. So, like also Peter said, we would love to hear the feedback. We are, so that we can improvise, we can improve later. So I would be quite interested in getting the feedback from the readers on some of the market.
Yeah, and actually, since I've got the last word, I'll use the opportunity to add in my sense. So we've got a community, we've got a flag, and now we've got a book, right? So things are coming together, and as I close many of my posts, there has never been a better time to be an enterprise architect. So again, everyone, thank you for joining us. Reach out anytime, connect with myself, any of the authors on LinkedIn, and thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for SAP Press for really being infrastructure to pull the authors and the book together to get it released today. So I hope you folks enjoy your copies, and we'll see you in the community. Bye now.